Hello, everyone. I am back on the podcast grind for a couple of days, so let's get to it. As I already mentioned before, I usually do not do reviews of Raw, SmackDown, or NXT on a weekly basis, but tonight I am making an exception because tonight was just a no NXT episode. This NXT episode was aired on USA Network as part of WWE Week on USA. That's a little bit of a tongue twister, excuse me. What my thoughts are, I thought it was pretty good. I wish there was more, but what can you do? It's pretty much like USA Network that was pulling the strings going on for airing of NXT, so there's nothing WWE could do much about it because USA Network was the one that was pulling the strings. But I thought that was pretty good. The opening match between Cien Almas and versus Eichner, and it was a pretty quick match. I wish more could come out because NXT is generally used for longer matches for the most part. But I can understand it was a quick match and. But it was still good. So, Andrade Cien Almas, who is now the current NXT champion, has to look good. And I've noticed there are some who are, not entirely sold on Andrade Cien Almas being the NXT champion. But you gotta realize something. First of all, NXT is still, by default, a developmental brand. So, the goal of NXT is to develop wrestlers to make sure that they're ready for Raw and SmackDown later on. So, early on when NXT became a developmental system, a large majority of the early NXT champions were developmental wrestlers. It wasn't until 2014 when Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens joined NXT that they started going towards the established indie veterans, as you could say, for example, Sami Zayn, Kevin Owens, Rude, Nakamura. You could also say Neville as well, but I don't think he was that big of a name like Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn because there were much bigger names in the indies. But I get that there were a lot more established indie wrestlers who were NXT champions. But now they're going back to the basics of a developing wrestler, so it's not a bad idea. Well, let's see how everything goes, and plus I got a feeling this is all a transition to make Aleister Black the new NXT champion, which I am very much in favor of. Speaking of Aleister Black, that was the main event, and I'll get to that later. And I know that the next match was Authors of Pain, and I thought that was an alright match, but pretty forgettable, so, I don't know why they added that match into the USA Network portion of the show. And, it was pretty surreal to see Eric Young do a promo on cable TV after a long time, because the last time I saw him doing a promo on cable TV was for TNA Impact Wrestling, so it still feels pretty surreal to see Eric Young on cable TV. But it's a good sign. But the main event between Adam Cole and Aleister Black, that was a very good match. I know Adam Cole came to shock the system, but at the end of the day, he faded to black from Aleister himself. Like I said, it was good, but could have been better. And I noticed that the women's match between Ember Moon and Peyton Royce was cut from the USA Network television broadcast, but it aired on WWE Network later that night. And I thought that was pretty weird. Why would they do that? But USA Network wanted to air more commercials. That was the only con of NXT on USA Network, was there's too many commercials. I was we suffer enough of those commercials on Raw and SmackDown every week. Why do it on USA Network? Is this Vince McMahon's idea? If this is how it's gonna go, then leave NXT on the WWE Network, where there's very limited commercials and only commercials that are in-house. Excuse me, that was probably my iPad in the background, if you heard it. But yeah, I mean, that was like the only con that I thought of NXT on USA Network. But it's not a bad show. It's still a good show. But I know there were like a vocal number of women's wrestling fans on Twitter that were pretty upset that the Ember Moon Peyton Royce match was cut off from the televised portion of the USA Network broadcast and only aired on the WWE Network. So who knows what's going to happen when or if NXT does join cable TV. So whether it's the USA Network or any other cable TV network, they definitely have a lot of potential. That's for sure. They definitely have a lot of potential. So that's that. Oh, it was announced earlier this morning that WWE will be introducing the Mixed Tag Team Wrestling Tournament, which is called Mixed Match Challenges. It's a little long name to remember, but yes, Mixed Match Challenges, where the men and women, select men and women from both Raw and SmackDown, will be competing against each other for charity. So I think that's actually a pretty good thing. I mean, it's for charity, so that's that. But at the same time, it's also predetermined. So is this just gonna make Raw look good? I mean, rooting for Monday Night Raw is like rooting for Bill Gates to win the lottery. Why would you want to do that? But anyway, I digress. I would have said it on a different video, but I think that's way too short for that. So I decided to talk about the mixed match challenges on this NXT on USA Network review podcast. And of course, tomorrow concludes WWE Week on the USA Network with Tribute to the Troops. So I will talk about that in another video. So. And that's will be discussed even further. It was already pre-taped, I believe last week or 2 weeks ago at the San Diego Naval Base, which I thought that was a pretty nice gesture because it's been a long time since WWE did Tribute to the Troops in an outdoor setting. I believe the last time they did it was 2010, 7 years ago. Since then, they've moved to indoor arenas where only military families would attend Tribute to the Troops, and I thought that was pretty weird. Really weird. Better to just do Tribute to the Troops in military areas. And I know they used to do it in Iraq and Afghanistan way back in the day before, I believe, before Obama became president. So, and I won't discuss politics right now, so that will be for another podcast in a non-wrestling one. And I will release a non-wrestling podcast coming soon, so follow me on Twitter for more details about that. All right, that's all I have to say for NXT on USA Network review, and I'm going to give it 4.5 stars. 4.5. I would have given it 5 if they aired the women's match, but 4.5 will have to do for now because the commercials were too much. Cut back on the commercials next time if you're ever going to air NXT on cable TV, USA Network. Please cut back. Thank you very much.